about Jaylen, just like what the hell happened. You know,
And
I
what do you
would
think
say
happened?
from game one last year, he looked, you know, everybody says he looked stoic. To me, last season, he never really looked stoic. He looked frustrated.
Burdened.
He looked exasperated. He looked uncertain. I don't know what any of that was about. And that's why we have crazy rumors floating around the atmosphere about, you know, dysfunction within the team. Something, you know, he did play very, very well at some points, but when I had a podcast several months ago, I had Brandon Brooks on. And it was a really interesting conversation.
I need your booking producer. That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, I just asked Brandon, you know. But he's working. He's trying to get a Wall Street career going.
Yeah.
And he's a really interesting guy. And this was before the season, and I was asking him what his thoughts about the Eagles. And he says, well, as long as Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, I think they'll be fine. And that was really what we all thought a year ago, you know.
Yeah.
And I just don't know what happened. I see this guy, you know, run around out there and throw the ball out of bounds and, you know, take 1 yard sacks for no reason, running out of bounds. And I don't know what the hell I don't know what's in his head. I don't know who he was angry with, who he was disappointed in, but maybe it was himself. But something was very wrong there, and I still want to see an explanation for that.
And along those lines, there was a tweet that Derek Gunn had yesterday saying that Jalen Hurts was pulled in a lot of directions post contract, and then he also had a line in there that said that essentially after Dom DeSandro's suspension, Nick Sirianni didn't have the person who kept him in emotional check on the sideline, and that led to fights with coaches, players, whatever it may be. We've discussed, Bo and I, on the show numbers of times, Jalen's personality, Jalen's demeanor. We've discussed Nick's personality, Nick's demeanor. What's your perspective on that? And from a bigger picture, you've dealt with a lot of Februaries in Eagles world where the team might be quiet. I mean, we said at the top of the show, they still haven't even announced their coaching staff.
We still don't know that.
The
offensive coordinator is the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, we haven't heard, the coordinators speak with an Eagles background behind it, right? The Eagles have been purposely quiet in recent weeks. What's your perspective on how to kind of navigate how that void of team statements and then multiple reports coming out during this period?
Well, I think, gossip abhors a vacuum, just like nature. It's
good reference.
If you don't give,
Zach's going to steal that.
Yes, I will.
If you don't give people explanations for things, they come up with their own explanations, and their own explanations can be outlandish and bizarre, but they gain some credence because who knows what happened? Something ridiculous happened. Maybe it's maybe there was some huge scandal. Maybe they were all on drugs. Maybe maybe that. I mean, you can say anything and right now and get some people to believe it because nothing like that had ever happened before to a team that was 10-1. So I do think that hurts the Eagles, the fact that there's no explanation for any of this and that they're being so quiet and so secretive. And part of this, the fixation on what must have happened is you don't have any, Kellen Moore quotes to, you can't dissect what he said about what he's going to do to the offense because he hasn't said anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you need something else to keep people occupied. You need to make the news what you want it to be, and they're not doing any. They're not making any news. They're just. But the Dom part of that was really interesting. I mean, I can't believe that's literally true. Just because you can't, you wouldn't have a head coach who can't.
Right. He wouldn't have survived if that was that.
Who needs the security director to keep him from yelling at coaches and players? I don't see Jeffrey and Howie.
It also didn't like the margins in those games were so vast. It was not like Nick being extra distracted on the sideline was the difference in those games. It was much more of a over
but
the
Nick's
week.
demeanor, I think, you asked me about Nick and Jaylen. I think they're very, very, very different people.
Yes.
And the thing that supposedly unites them is their competitiveness. But if one sees the other as being focused in a negative way, that could be very frustrating to that person. If Jaylen sees Nick's, childish yelling at opposing fans as, why isn't this guy thinking about what we need to do on 3rd and 5? That can become a big problem. If Nick wants Jaylen to be a quarterback who runs around, pounding people on the chest and grabbing their face masks and so forth, that can be a problem. I think there's a lot of when people are that different, and they really are.
Yes.
Very, very, very different in their approach to things. I think there's a lot of room for conflict there.
We all silly like the mayor.